Minister Ong Ye Kung.
Mr. Speaker, sir, when Mr. Melvin Yong said that we need better media literacy, I was bracing myself that he will say, so we need MOE to teach media literacy. Because many problems in the world, we always hear people say that the root of the problem is education must be better, and it will solve the problem. But that aside, the ambit of this law has little to do with my ministry. But since I received a letter from concerned academics, I thought I should speak at this debate. So as of 6th May afternoon, I think Associate Professor Walter Teixeira reported just now, the letter is currently signed by 124 academics, and we didn't do any database check, but to the best of MOE's knowledge, 71 are foreign academics based in foreign universities, 52 are Singaporeans, 25 based in foreign universities outside of Singapore, 27 based in local university. There is one signatory who is a foreign academic based in the local university. My colleagues from MCI and MinLaw have offered to meet with the academics who signed the letter. The offer has not been formally taken up yet, but I understand many of them have attended the dialogue sessions with Minister Shanmugam, SMS Edwin Tong, as well as SMS Janil Puthucheary, who 3 of them have been visiting universities and conducting talks. And I hope that our 3 POHs have largely assuaged their concerns. So today I will explain how hard, or rather how impossible it is for academic research to run afoul of POFMA. Second, I will comment on what I think the academics, or at least some of them, are really worried about. I will try. And I will end my speech with a summary in Mandarin. But today's debate, I've been sitting here the whole day listening to the debate, I think we have started to discuss, unfortunately start to obfuscate what the core matter is about. We started to come up with scenarios that we think whether truth or falsehood or truth or facts are somewhat fuzzy. We talked about the balance between the executive and the judiciary. We talk about fast versus slow processes. But really, what is this issue about? The issue is that we really have a serious threat from online falsehoods. SM Teo in the members' lounge was just telling me when he was young, he remembered when the racial riots was happening. I think it was the Straits Times had big headlines saying, "Stop rumor mongering," because that was fueling the riots, real public harm. You just imagine today, with the tools in the hands of people with malicious intent, it's 1,000 times easier to come up with a falsehood. It will spread thousands of times faster, thousands of times broader and wider, thousands of times more serious impact. And this is what we are really dealing with. So first, let me reiterate the 2 gates through which any falsehood must pass before it can be corrected or removed by this bill. 1, what is put up online must be a statement of fact that is false. 2, it must cause public harm. When these 2 gates are crossed, then the falsehood may be corrected or removed by a direction. Directions are not criminal punishments, it's just a correction. So let's put things in perspective here. All that we are debating about, the powers of ministers, it is the power to initiate a correction of an online falsehood that has gone viral and has public harm. That's what we are debating about. Then for there to be criminal liability, a 3rd gate has to be crossed, which is that the propagator of the falsehood must have knowledge that it is false and it is harmful. So there's malicious intent. And that is for the ministers and ministries to justify, prosecutors to initiate, and the courts to decide on the verdict. So what kind of online activities would pass the 2 gates? Let me give a few examples. I was thinking that I can cut down on the examples because I expect many members will be citing various examples, but given the examples I'm hearing, let's get back to what are the examples we are talking about. 2 years ago in Germany, there was a report that a mob of 50, I quote, Arab-looking, unquote, men assaulted women on New Year's Eve in downtown Frankfurt. The story went viral. But when the German police investigated, they found no evidence of this mysterious assault. The newspaper eventually conceded that the attacks described in the article did not take place. They apologized. They took down the article from all its platforms. But more people have read and remembered the falsehood in the original article than the clarification. The damage was done. Public sentiments shifted. Society becomes more tense. Political discourse altered. We are familiar with Brexit. During the campaign on the referendum, a falsehood was going around that Turkey was going to join the EU and Britain will be flooded with immigrants from Turkey. The falsehood might have well affected the outcome of the referendum and the fate of the United Kingdom. It will get worse as technology continues to advance. You can now use AI to make fake videos of a real person, deep fakes. I think Bikram Khanna wrote about it in Straits Times today. So you just Google Obama deep fake, you will find a video of the former US president, I found it, delivering a speech with swear words and all, which he, of course, did not make. You can also find a deepfake video of President Donald Trump telling an audience in Belgium that they should withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement, which was a speech he did not make. But you do not even need to deploy sophisticated technology to spread false information. 1998, Dr. Andrew Wakefield published a controversial study that linked MMR vaccine, which protects against measles, mumps, and rubella, to autism. Circulated widely. Although the study has been totally debunked, it helped fuel a dangerous movement of vaccine skepticism and refusal around the world. It was later discovered that Wakefield has falsified the data, had been paid by lawyers involved in an MMR lawsuit. The paper was retracted only in 2010, 10 years after its publication. The paper remains severely harmful, as children who are unvaccinated could lose their lives. So deliberate lies, connivance, impersonations, incitement of unrest, and societal anger and turmoil. This is what we are dealing with. This is the world of online falsehoods and manipulations that this bill is targeting. In contrast, what is research? It is about experiments, gathering data, testing hypotheses, publishing findings, discovering how the world works, and having work reviewed by peers, and following a strict discipline and a strict process. We should distinguish between two kinds of research. The first kind is empirical-based approach to understanding how the world and the nature work. This is what researchers are doing in A-STAR, in faculties such as engineering, medicine, in our universities. They are figuring out how the human genome works, finding new cures for diseases, ways to cut down on carbon emission, developing new materials for buildings and bridges, inventing new models with new AI technology and algorithms to have sharper predictive powers. In this field, in all these fields, scientists are questioning truth all the time. It is an endless quest for knowledge, where our understanding of nature and life are constantly proven and then unproven. Newton's laws of motion, which used to be widely accepted, are proven now to be only partially true. Scientists have also proven that time, which is used to, we believe is constant, actually it can be stretched, it can be compressed, it can be bent. So one branch of empirically based research is data science. I recently came across a book called Gyasunomics. It's written by 3 NUS researchers. It is a popular version of a series of papers they had published. So they gathered vast amount of data, including getting a lot of data from government departments and agencies, and tested many hypotheses. They found, after the removal of KTM railway, the HDB flats around the railway line went up significantly. They found out that yellow taxis have fewer accidents than blue taxis. Yeah. Households use more water when there was haze, etc. And they went on to explain why. And it is very possible that one day someone may gather more data and refute their findings. So does that mean POFMA will criminalize those researchers whose discoveries and theories were proven wrong or partially true? So will Newton be caught by POFMA because his laws are now only partially true? Or the 3 authors of Yasunomics will be persecuted one day if blue taxis have more accidents than yellow taxis? Or will POFMA criminalize research that is trying to disprove a theory or body of knowledge that is already well established? The answer is no. That is simply not the business of POFMA. Any attempts to apply POFMA to empirically based natural sciences research, it failed at the first gate I mentioned. There are 2 gates. It will fail at the first gate. Which is the first gate, you ask, is there falsehood? No, because researchers use real data and observations to draw their conclusions. And even if the data may not be accurate because the experiment was not well conducted, the data collected is not reproducible or incomplete, there is no falsehood as defined by POFMA. One honorable member mentioned 15 years ago 2 labor economists got into trouble because they used partial data and concluded 9 out of 10 jobs in Singapore went to foreigners. So now let's apply POFMA 2 gates to this case. First gate, was there falsehood? There wasn't. They used real data. There wasn't falsehood. They used real data. It was incomplete, but they did not fabricate data. Second, was there public harm? I don't think there was any riots or was there any very heightened tensions. It will fail at both gates. Incidentally, after I heard that speech, I did a check on the 2 academics. Both of them are still teaching in LKY School of Public Policies. They were, and I understand they are now both Singaporeans. Yeah. They applied for citizenship after that instance. Second gate, is there public harm? I don't believe good, honest research can cause public harm. Now, I talked about the first type of research. The second type of research is based on opinion, philosophy, interpretation of history, cultural bias, geographical context, etc. This is mainly practiced by researchers in the humanities. So instead of empirical data, they use methods that are primarily critical and interpretive to substantiate their hypotheses and arguments. So I enjoy reading the book of this author called Yuval Noah Harari. He's a historian, Israeli, and a tenured professor at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. So his 2 best-selling books, Sapiens, Homo Deus, I read both of them. He cites some empirical findings, but most of it he describes his deduction, his thoughts, and his opinions. So he gave his take on the origins and purpose of religion in holding complex societies together. He has an expansionary definition of religion that many will find offensive, actually. And he postulated that humans will achieve near immortality and godlike powers not too far into the future. So some of the works of humanities scholars, like Yuval Noah Harari, can be controversial, highly debatable, even offensive to some. But they cannot be subject to POFMA. In fact, they wouldn't even reach the 2 gates of POFMA. Their conclusions are in the form of hypotheses, theories, and opinions that are not covered by the bill. And Minister Shanmugam, I'm sure, will explain why and how. This bill is about truthfulness of fact. Did the man really assault the woman? Did the president really give that speech? Was Turkey really joining the EU? Those were the statements of facts that concern POFMA. Now let me wrap up this section of my speech, and I have to talk about Galileo, which can't resist. Quite a few members talked about it. Actually, it is an excellent case study of how research upset conventional wisdom. I want to talk about how it was treated then and how it will be treated today under POFMA, should it happen today. Of course, today we know that the Earth goes around the sun. But at that time, the belief was that the sun goes around the Earth, and it was an important concept central to the power of the Church and the Roman authorities. So Galileo wanted to prove the reverse, so he built his own telescope. He spent many lonely days and nights staring into the sky, collected data, and proved that it's the other way around, that the Earth revolves around the Sun. But despite his empirical methods, Associate Professor Walter Teixeira talked about the Inquisition. So his challenge was not kindly taken by the Roman authorities. Other astronomers came out with their observations and data to prove that the Sun indeed revolved around the Earth. So he was sentenced to indefinite imprisonment, kept under house arrest until his death. So what if something like that were to happen today, involving a question to which we have no answers, or we thought we had an answer? And the researcher comes up with something that challenges deeply held views or shared reality, as Associate Professor Teixeira mentioned. In our context, I can assure the House that it is empirical research. We will stay true to science and empirical evidence. We have always been, sometimes to a fault. And if it's an opinion-based research, we will have a rigorous public debate. Under both scenarios, POFMA does not apply in such a discourse. The only way POFMA comes in is if the research used false observations and data to start with. You fabricated the data, which prevents the public discourse from taking place properly. In which case, such work, I don't think it can pass the academic standards and professional standards of any decent university or research institute. Mr. Speaker, sir, research that challenges conventional wisdom and shared belief is happening as we speak, in ways, I think, more significant than when Galileo was working on the Sun and Earth. Quantum scientists have discovered that a very small particle can appear at 2 places or more places at the same time until you look at it. So it's a bit mind-boggling. You are not really there until I look at you. The score is not 4-0 until I look at it. Right? So it didn't really happen. So it's too simplistic a way to put it, but they are questioning reality as we know it. In economics, the post-global financial crisis debate continues on the efficacy of fiscal policy, monetary policy, and quantitative easing. Researchers are questioning the causal relationship between unemployment and the skills gap, and if a nation's success should also include measures beyond the GDP, to include ecological sustainability and social equity. So big questions are undergoing research now. These works challenge existing beliefs in far more profound ways than any memes, blog posts, video, or opinion piece in newspapers shared online, which is the practical focus of POFMA. These research are ongoing, welcomed, and embraced. And if any of our researchers make such a breakthrough in our understanding of the world, rather than being persecuted, as Mr. Cedric Fu said, they are more likely to be celebrated and maybe even accorded a National Day Award. This government will always honor empirical and evidence-based research. Let me try to address what I think some of the academics are really concerned about. I may be wrong, but I don't think it is about research. I think they are worried that POFMA will be abused and used to stifle political discourse in Singapore. Because not all researchers are just researchers. Most researchers may also be activists. Nothing wrong with that. But it is their activist role that some of these academics are voicing their concerns about POFMA. So there's a request for an explicit carve-out for opinions, criticisms, satires, etc. in the bill. I want to point out that we cannot conflate research with activism. I read a Facebook post by Dr. Derek D'Acunha, and I thought he put it very well. He observed that some academics, I quote, spend every other week banging away on the subject online and offline because his or her motivation is to effect change. This isn't even a case of any contentiousness over what is or is not the truth, unquote. And he added, and I quote again, instead, it brings up the question what is the appropriate role of an academic? Any contention that academics should not adhere to boundaries or parameters, but such boundaries or parameters should exist for everyone else, might be an unreasonable proposition, unquote. The same point was made by a Straits Times forum letter writer who asked, I quote, "Where is the line between exercising academic freedom to pursue truth and wisdom and hiding behind academic freedom to fulfill partisan political and socio-economic agendas? Does having academic freedom mean one has carte blanche to communicate irresponsibility and without credible evidence?" Unquote. Now let me put it quite plainly. Any activist will not be caught by POFMA if you express an opinion or even hurl criticisms at the government. The law treats all activists equally, whether you are an academic or a man or woman on the street. It does not target academics. You are as free as an ordinary citizen to comment on current affairs or critique the government. Conversely, any activist, whether you are an academic or a man or woman on the street, who uses online medium to spread falsehoods and harm society, it will come under POFMA. POFMA offers no special shield to academics either. But the law aside, in this era of free-for-all communications and interactions, public discourse is becoming more rigorous. And here is where things may get a little bit different for academics. Academics are well-respected members of society. We hold academics to conduct professorial, high standards of integrity in their teaching, their research, and the validity of their views put forward in public. This is especially so when they speak or make social media posts on current affairs while bearing the title of a professor in a publicly funded university. So you can put out an opinion that Singapore growth model has failed. You can say meritocracy in Singapore has failed. You can say the education system is elitist. Our social welfare doesn't work, and it does more harm than good. POFMA will not apply to you because that is your opinion. But in the interest of open debate, and given your stature in society and position in a publicly funded university, please expect government agencies, if we do not agree with you, to put out the data and put out our arguments to convince the public otherwise. If that has a chilling effect, please chill. The same and perhaps even higher expectations apply to my cabinet colleagues and I. Whatever we say needs to be well thought out, set the tone for society, and be in the best interests of people. Today, if any one of us put forward a view in a speech, during a dialogue, or in an Instagram or Facebook post, and if the public don't agree with us, they will speak up and give us a piece of their mind. And we'll have to consider those views and re-evaluate our position. The interaction will get more active and rigorous. It is part and parcel of modern governance. And when it comes to our decisions and actions, the scrutiny will be even more intense. We want this interaction and exchange of ideas and opinions to be free of malicious falsehoods, which poison the atmosphere and mislead the discourse. POFMA enhances and not diminishes democratic public discourse. Mr. Speaker, in Mandarin, please. 议长，现在让我用华语继续发言。假新闻，古代就有，例如魏晋年间，北方的前秦派大军南下，攻打东晋。两军在淝水对峙时，东晋提出：“秦兵你们后撤，让我们过河。”王后决一死战。秦军说可以，所以他们的前锋开始后撤。但正在他们后撤的时候，混入他们军队里的晋军人马上就大喊：“秦军败了！”他们投降后退了，秦军败了。秦兵竟然信以为真，以为后撤就是战败，结果士气大消，溃不成军，节节败退。那时候的秦军人心惶惶，一草一木的摇动， 都以为是晋军的埋伏。这就是成语"草木皆兵"的典故。兵不厌诈，从古至今都是如此，都会用假讯息来导换社会和人民的情绪。新加坡也不例外。但今天所出现的假信息不同往日。第一，假信息的管道变多了，互联网、手机越来越普及。第二，假信息的传播也加快了。麻省理工学院的一项社交媒体调查发现，假信息一天能传2万人，真相3天传1万人，假的比真的快6倍。第三，假信息的破坏力更大了。3年前，英国为脱欧进行公投，网络充斥假信息，包括土耳其将加入欧盟，移民会大举涌入英国。这样的虚拟假造，为的是误导选民，影响公投的结果。除了政治，民众的日常生活也受假信息的困扰。8年前，日本东北发生大地震，核能发电厂受了损害。社交媒体传一则谣言说，吃白盐啊，白的盐可以预防核辐射，这导致民众到超市扫购，把公寓完全清空。说不说远的，说近的，2017年，牙龙的沙爹小贩被传贩卖狗肉和猫肉，同时也有人指控本地的超市贩卖塑胶米。幸好2次都得到及时的澄清，没有造成更大的恐慌。随着科技发达，问题只会加剧。这几年来，人工智能已具备了换脸术，就是 deepfake， 电脑能够根据影像记录合成并伪造视频，冒充真人的言行。这样的造假技术潜藏可怕的危害。中国已经决定禁止换脸术的使用。科技的发展我们无法阻挡，但延伸的问题我们却不能够闪避。我们有责任寻找方法对症下药。本次法案目的明确，范围清楚。像我举的例子，法案可以要求网络平台或媒体机构刊登更正。要是别有居心、恶意假造，也会受到提控。有学者担心这会钳制公众言论，甚至影响学术研究，这绝是多心了。本次法案只针对像我所叙述的例子，关于到事实的陈述，完全不涵盖观点与评论。除非研究报告附有假造的数据或捏造的事实，否则大家请放心。法案所制裁的是假新闻的作者，而不是传递讯息的人，所以大家也不需担心。虽然如此，我还是希望大家能够时时刻刻保持警惕，先确认信息的真实性，才传发给你的亲戚朋友。太阳底下本无新鲜事，但网络时代的到来，却让千奇百怪的事物层出不穷。法案所能触及的，可能只是沧海一粟，但我们相信受打击的，必定是那些最为严重、危害最大的假信息。纵观全球，民主制度的运作，社会百姓的生活，已受到假信息的严重威胁。我们提出本次法案，更深层的原因，就是要为了保护我们的生活。Mr. Speaker, sir, let me conclude. We know that online falsehoods have affected elections and referendum results, twisted public sentiments, heightened public tensions, societal tensions, altered political discourse. A big worry of the modern world is whether democracy can withstand this onslaught. And indeed, this is a major challenge of our times. Today, the odds are stacked against those of us who are trying to uphold institutions, all of us in this House. The balance of power is asymmetrical, heavily weighted in favor of those with malicious intentions. It is far easier to make a sensational falsehood viral than the technical correction. It is far easier to use bots to spread falsehoods than to use a speech and use traditional media coverage. I'll give you an example. In the recent shooting in New Zealand, the shooter had a live Facebook feed for 17 minutes. Let's juxtapose that video against the standards under POFMA. Is there public harm as the second gate? Definitely. Did the perpetrator possess knowledge of the harm? That's the third gate? Certainly. Is there falsehood? There isn't. What was live was what took place. So POFMA cannot enforce a takedown of this feed. In the end, it was taken down not by the force of law, but by Facebook itself, under a lot of pressure. Relative to the explosion of online capabilities that is now presented to those with malicious intent, the ambit of this law is not large. When online falsehoods are perpetrated, it only gives the government legislative powers for a surgical and judicious insertion of additional facts through a correction order. And that is as far as the executive powers of ministers go. It is not the omnipresent, draconian, nuclear weapon, infinite gauntlet snap that some people make it out to be. While small, POFMA is a necessary response to this tectonic technological change to protect democratic public discourse, which we cherish. Let me raise one last point. Associate Professor Walter Teixeira talked about the need for a shared reality for any society and acknowledged the need for that. For democracy and constructive discourse to work, there must be a common understanding of the underlying facts of the country, what happened and what did not. And I'm glad you acknowledged that. Some of these facts shape the character and common ethos of a nation. Today's understanding of shared reality with science and history is no longer like the 17th century. I think we have proper science, we have a well-recorded history. It's no longer like Galileo's time. So in Germany, the Holocaust happened. The Germans had lived under a dark period of Nazism, and that is an undeniable fact. You deny that actually is illegal in Germany. In China, May 4th movement happened 100 years ago. Revolution of 1949 happened, and those events shaped modern China. The US liberated the slaves and went through a devastating civil war. That happened. In Singapore, we are a small, multicultural island state and face communist threats even after our independence. Those happened. Today, researchers continue to study and interpret those events, what caused them, what they represented, what is their impact today. But they cannot deny that they happened and continue to shape the character and psyche of societies today. A society that holds on to certain truth is a social necessity, a binding force in politics, a prerequisite for civil discussions. Lose these, and the country loses part of its soul. Otherwise, democracy becomes a marketplace of merchants peddling forgeries. Only by holding on to certain truth, we are able to continually, collectively identify the issues that are important to us, the options and paths we can take, and decide the way forward without the lies and without the manipulations. Associate Professor Walter Teixeira said, this is a vote of conscience. It is indeed a vote of conscience, because look at the tectonic shifts that we are faced with. Technology have all fundamentally changed society, changed the political discourse. It is changing politics and modern society as we know it. All governments around the world need new rules, new laws, new mechanisms to deal with this tectonic change. It is a vote of conscience. Speaker, sir, thank you.